Scientists performed a relatively tiny research in a relatively tiny part of Iran that ended up cementing the idea that more than half of the entire population are dead scared of the deep sea. And that's probably for a good reason, even though the ocean now is paradise compared to 300 and something years ago. This is not to say the current ocean is somewhat a fun place to be, but to give the idea of how deadly and scary prehistoric oceans were, let me take you back to the late Devonian period, about 380 to 360 million years ago. This is the only known period in history that fishes completely dominated the sea. If you're to look carefully, almost every major group of fish we know today can be traced back to this time, making it the defining period in evolutionary history. And let's say for some imaginable reason you found yourself to be a diver at this point in time, you were in for a treat, because one, the seas were mostly shallow, especially compared to today's vast ocean basins. Most marine life thrived in what we now call epicontinental seas, huge, relatively shallow seas that covered large parts of the continents. These waters were usually less than a few hundred meters deep, with some areas only tens of meters in depth, making them more like gigantic lagoons than the deep abyssal oceans we usually think of today. And it's worth remembering that these shallow seas didn't exist because there was more water on the planet. If anything, it was the exact opposite. Instead, sea levels were much higher than today, flooding large parts of the continents and creating vast, warm, and sunlit waters. With no major ice caps at the poles and a globally warm climate, the ocean expanded into low-lying land, forming massive inland seas. These waters became thriving ecosystems, home to coral reefs, early fish like Bothrioplepis, a heavily armored fish that fed on the ocean floor. An early ancestor of modern sharks, Climatius, a 3 inches long swift swimmer that hunted on smaller prey, while giant Jaekelopterus, a sea scorpion the size of a human, patrolled the shallows with deadly pincers, and ammonoids, the spiral-shelled relatives of modern squids, filled the seas in swirling schools, serving as both prey and predator. Amid this evolutionary arms race, this terrifying beast dominated the ancient seas, reigning as the ultimate predator. Meet the Dunkleosteus, a monstrous armored fish with jaws strong enough to crush the door or hood of your Honda Civic in an instant. That's if you drive one, of course. The exact size of this prehistoric monster is still unknown, simply because no complete skeleton has ever been found. Instead, scientists have had to estimate its size based on fossilized skull plates and jawbones. Early reconstructions suggested Dunkleosteus could reach lengths of up to 10 meters, which is about 33 feet, making it one of the largest armored fish to ever exist. However, more recent studies have challenged this idea. In 2017, this amazing paleontologist, Russell Engelman, reanalyzed Dunkleosteus fossils and suggested that previous size estimates were exaggerated. Instead of a massive, bulky fish stretching 10 meters, he proposed a more streamlined body, reducing its estimated length to about 4 to 6 meters. That's about 13 to 20 feet, similar in size to a great white shark. This revision was based on comparisons to other placoderms, as Dunkleosteus had a shorter, more compact body rather than the elongated form originally assumed. And to think of it, this new size should have been a disadvantage. I mean, think about it. In the animal kingdom, larger predators often dominate. A longer body typically means it could generate immense forward momentum when attacking prey, and a shorter body usually means less raw power, slower speeds, and a reduced ability to overpower larger prey. But if you think this way, which most people do, it means you can't conceptualize what 20 feet actually looks like in real life. To put it into perspective, 20 feet is the length of a standard shipping container, the kind you see stacked at ports or loaded onto trucks worldwide. Imagine standing next to one of those massive steel containers. Now picture it coming to life, armored in thick bone plating, surging through the water at over 11 meters per hour. Unlike sharks, which have flexible cartilage-based skeletons, Dunkleosteus was a placoderm, meaning it had a heavily armored skull made of thick, interlocking bony plates. Researchers found that its skull plates could withstand forces exceeding 5,300 newtons without fracturing, meaning you could swing a sledgehammer at full force and it wouldn't even crack. In fact, if you shot it with a 9mm handgun, the bullet would likely flatten or ricochet off its bony armor rather than penetrating. To actually break through a Dunkleosteus skull, you'd need something far more powerful, a high-caliber rifle like a 50 BMG, which generates over 15,000 newtons of force on impact. Even then, it might take multiple shots to fully shatter the thickest parts of its skull. And this only gets interesting. One of the most terrifying adaptations of Dunkleosteus was its unique jaw mechanism, which allowed it to open and close its mouth at lightning speed. Unlike modern sharks and other popular prehistoric creatures, which generate power from muscle-driven bites, Dunkleosteus had a 4-bar linkage system in its skull, a feature more commonly seen in mechanical engineering than in nature. It's almost as if Mother Nature had a personal favorite and decided to go all out. Because let's be real, no other creature in the history of the sky, land, or sea has ever hit the evolutionary jackpot quite like this. This system allowed its jaw to open in just 20 milliseconds, and that's 1/50th of a second, creating a sudden suction effect that pulled prey into its mouth before they could escape. When closing, its jaws slammed shut with a speed of 4 milliseconds, nearly 10 times faster than the average human could blink. Dunkleosteus had no teeth in the traditional sense. Instead, its mouth was lined with self-sharpening bony plates. These plates rubbed against each other, maintaining a razor-sharp edge that, when exerted, reaches up to 55 megapascals, comparable to the shearing force of industrial metal-cutting machines used today. Its muscle-to-body ratio estimates suggest Dunkleosteus could burst forward at speeds exceeding 5 meters per second, similar to a great white shark's ambush speed. Instead of chasing prey over long distances, it likely lunged forward in explosive bursts, using its sharp jaws to dispatch prey in a single strike. And although it probably wouldn't be a fun experience for you, there's a fair chance that if you lived near the oceans of North American, Europe, and prehistoric North Africa, you would have definitely encountered some of these nightmares. During the Devonian period, around 370 million years ago, Earth's continents looked nothing like they do today. Instead of the familiar shapes of Europe, Africa, and the Americas, the planet was dominated by two supercontinents, Laurussia, made up of what is now North America, Greenland, and parts of Europe. Gondwana, a massive landmass containing South America, Africa, Australia, Antarctica, and parts of Asia. Between these two giants lay the Reich Ocean, a playground of not only Dunkleosteus, but also other placoderm predators like Gorgonychthys, a rival that may have directly competed with it for dominance. Gorgonychthys was another massive placoderm, though slightly smaller than Dunkleosteus, reaching around 10 to 13 feet in length. While it lacked the sheer bite force of Dunkleosteus, it made up for it with other terrifying adaptations that put it in direct competition with the Devonian's apex predator. Just like Dunkleosteus, Gorgonychthys was covered in thick, bony armor, especially around the head. This meant Dunkleosteus couldn't easily bite through it, making direct combat between these two titans a brutal contest of strength and endurance, rather than a one-sided slaughter. Gorgonychthys also had razor-sharp jaw plates designed for slicing through prey. Though not as devastating as Dunkleosteus's bite, its jaws were still formidable. It could carve through smaller placoderms and soft-bodied prey with terrifying efficiency. Both Dunkleosteus and Gorgonychthys hunted the same large Devonian fish, early sharks, and smaller placoderms. This would have put them in direct competition for food, making battles between these two armored nightmares almost inevitable. But for the most part, Dunkleosteus was the top predator of its ecosystem. It later appeared that the biggest threat to a Dunkleosteus was another Dunkleosteus, and not a Gorgonychthys. Fossils with deep bite marks on their skulls suggest they fought among themselves, possibly over territory, mates, or dominance. And although they never met on prehistoric battlefields, what do you think would happen if we exposed this scary creature here to this even more scary creature? This is Xiphactinus, the prehistoric monster fish of the late Cretaceous seas, a massive short-tempered fish that looked like a nightmare fusion of a barracuda and a great white shark. It ruled the western interior seaway, an ancient ocean that covered much of modern-day North America, around 90 to 66 million years ago, sharing its waters with mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and even early sharks. Xiphactinus grew up to 20 feet long, which is about the size of a small school bus, with a mouth full of dagger-like teeth, some over 5 centimeters long. Unlike Dunkleosteus, which relied on a shearing bite, Xiphactinus had a flexible jaw similar to that of a snake, allowing it to swallow large prey whole. This made it one of the most efficient apex predators of the Cretaceous seas, as it didn't need to waste time biting and tearing apart its food. It simply gulped it down. Fossils of Xiphactinus have been found with entire perfectly preserved fish inside their stomachs, including prey nearly half their own size. In some cases, Xiphactinus likely choked to death trying to swallow prey that was too large. But all things being equal in an already disturbing ocean, who do you think would win in a fight? Let me know in the comment section. And if we manage to put that aside for a second, scientists believe Dunkleosteus may have migrated between the Reich Ocean and the surrounding seaways, making it a truly global nightmare in the end. And in case you want to know, my name is DM. See you in the next one.